I don't understand exactly how, all the details of it. But I do know this. The one who judges the unbeliever will judge the unbeliever as a judge, meting out perfect justice. But the one who judges the believer will judge the believer as a father, as a son, as a bridegroom. Now just think about it for a moment. If Joseph could have such pity on Mary, finding her pregnant, thinking that she was in sin, but being a righteous man, he sought to put her away secretly so as not to bring any shame upon her. If Joseph could show that much pity to what he thought was a sinful woman, how much pity will the bridegroom show to his bride on the day that she appears before him, knowing that all her sin has been paid for by his own hand? Now, let me say something here that's very important that a lot of times we don't understand. When you're justified, you're not just pardoned. You say, yes, that's true, Brother Paul. We're given the righteousness of Christ. Yes, but I want you to understand something about this idea of forgiveness. There have been men who have committed horrible crimes only to be pardoned. To be pardoned. And later on, after receiving their pardon, they couldn't bear with their guilt and they ended up committing suicide. Because their guilt was upon them. And why was their guilt upon them? Because they were pardoned, but the crime was never paid for. The guilt was still outstanding. That is not the case with you. You see, you just haven't been pardoned. You were pardoned because the crimes were paid for. The guilt no longer exists. Your conscience is clean because the guilt is not outstanding. It was paid for 100% in the cross of Calvary. So he stands in relation. The one who's going to judge us stands in relation to us as a bridegroom, as a father, as a brother. That's encouraging. So although I don't understand the ins and outs of what it means for the believer to be judged on that great and final day, I'm not so concerned about it. Yes, I do know what Paul wrote, knowing the fear of the Lord. Hopefully I do fear the Lord. But it brings me great consolation to know that the one who's going to judge me died for me. Now, in the relation of a bride to him. Now guys, I want us to take sin, our ideas about sin, to a whole new level this morning. Sin is always dirty. But unfaithfulness in the marriage bonds just seems very dirty. The damage it does can many times not even be recuperated. Damage, terrible damage. I want you to look at your sin as unfaithfulness to a spouse, as a horrid thing that does great damage, because you stand in relationship to him as a bride. Now that language is a little bit difficult for us as men. But what I want you to understand is there's nothing of some kind of twisted femininity here. What he is doing is simply pulling from every example possible to show us the intimacy, the friendship, the love that exists between us and God, and the demands of covenant faithfulness. You sin against your wife, you sin against a husband, you have broken covenant with them. It's a terrible thing. Now, and as such he rejoices over them with exceeding great joy. I rejoice over my children with exceeding great joy. Even though I have to discipline them, I have to show anger towards them at times, righteous anger. I have to correct them. But I rejoice over my children with exceeding great joy. Even at 4 in the morning, like this morning, when my little boy Evan decides that his bed is just a little bit too scary. And so he walks in and, you know, you open up your eyes as a dad, you're sleeping finally, and you think you hear a noise in your sleep, and you open your eyes and there's something staring right at you, and then you leap completely over your wife and push her towards the alien that is coming to the room. But then when I got out of bed, let him crawl up in the bed, and I tucked him in there. He was snuggling beside his mom, as happy as a human gets. I always tell people, when you're too old to do that, and when you're too old to wear those pajamas with the feet in them, with the rubber on the bottom, that's when life starts getting tough. But to just laugh and rejoice, tuck him in and say, okay, I'll get up a half an hour early. Now, if we, being evil, can rejoice in our children, for whom we have not made payment, how much does God rejoice in you? Have you ever thought about God rejoicing over you? I mean, has that ever been a reality? That's sad. You need to think about that. It's exciting when you move into that sphere and begin to think that way. If you come down from a pulpit and everybody in that church is extremely mad at you, and for once, it's not because you did something stupid. It's because you really did preach the truth. And you go back to that hotel room and you get down on your knees and God rejoices over you. Or when you sit there and build a cabinet by the grace of God, by the strength He's given your mind and your hands to figure out a task, to cut the angles correctly, and it all fits in place. You sit down and look at it, and God rejoices. You see how much you miss? What, you think this is a religion? Do you see how much you can miss? Just real quick, something that may help you. There is nothing more depressing than being around boorish people. Now, what do I mean? I can hardly